Hi, and welcome to Chess for Life in the time of the coronavirus. Today, we are absolutely delighted to welcome International Master Ken Regan to the show. Now, Ken is Associate Professor at the University of Buffalo in the Department of Computer and Engineering. He is also an International Master at Chess. He was equal first with John Fedorovitz in the US Junior Championship in 1977, and he's been one of the USCF youngest ever masters since Bobby Fischer. He also has written chess papers on the endgame, and he's also written a not chess book on quantum algorithmics via linear algebra. Ta-da! You can see that? And he also has been consultant to FIDE since 2013 on anti-cheating. Ken, a very big welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on it.
Ken, can you start by telling us how you got into chess?
Kind of like Capablanca. I was 5 years old and I saw my father playing chess with my uncle on an Oriental chess set. Definitely attracted my attention, so I asked my father how to play, and he taught me the rules, and we played like every other evening for 6 months. It took me 6 months, after which I was able to beat him.
At the age of 6?
Yeah, at the age of 6, yes. Then I had a lot of interests as a child, collecting coins, planting gardens, insects, dinosaurs, and the like. But then when I was 9 going on 10, I discovered that there is such a thing as chess clubs and chess tournaments.
Yes.
So I and my brother joined the Dumont Chess Club. We were paired in the first round and he beat me. And then later that summer, I realized that there was something called the New York Area Under 12 Championship being run by William Goichberg.
Oh, okay.
Today, Bill and I have been good friends for 50 years now. So I entered it, and I won it in a walkover. I was the only entrant. So he
Congratulations.
let me into the under 16 tournament, with big kids. I was 10, it's up to 16. And I tied for second or third, I forget which, with the 4-1 record. Won a trophy. So,
Wow. So a flying start to your chess career.
And it's definitely launched me toward it. I was, 2 years later, Bill drove up with me and 2 other people to a Shelby Lyman studio in Albany, New York, for the 2 of the games broadcast of the World Championship Fischer-Spassky. So when people size up my age and they say, "Oh, I bet you learned the moves during the Fischer-Spassky match," I fold my arms and say, "No, actually, I was already almost a master player during the match, and I was one of the expert commentators for 2 of the games."
Oh, wow.
So
Fantastic.
was Fischer your hero at the time?
Believe it or not, no. Because I knew enough about, well, first of all, I'd already by age 13, I had made a decision that I was not going to go into chess professionally. That my first love was mathematical, physical, and research, and I had my sights set on Princeton University, where I did go. Yeah. So I never, for instance, accepted money on the premise that I was going to be a professional player. Yeah. But also Fischer, I knew enough about his life that it wasn't something that I was going to emulate. Yeah. So he actually, I very much applauded his winning, but I was also disappointed that he didn't defend his title. There's a further story I could show you on the screen in public that maybe I should. I've written it already on the blog. So it was interesting I loved his book, My 60 Memorial Games, and
it's
one
a
of the first
book,
books
isn't
my
it?
father bought me was Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, which turns out a lot of the work on that book was done by Leslie Alt, who was a member of my club at Dumont, a really wonderful person. Leslie and his brother Robert. So
yeah, and then so you're doing maths and chess, I guess, in parallel, and then you were studying maths.
Yeah, my interests were mathematics, physics, and languages in school.
Okay. Which languages did you study, Ken?
Italian, German, and Spanish.
Wow. Okay. And then, so you studied, did you say Princeton, first of all?
Yes, I went from my high school. My high school had one previous person go to Yale. But then suddenly in my year, 1977, the school had its second, third, fourth, and fifth Ivy Leaguers.
Wow.
All go to Princeton at the same time.
Okay, how nice. Yeah.
So that was just a wonderful, wonderful happening.
Yeah.
I mean, are you still in contact with those people, actually? I mean, did they...
Well, my closest friend, unfortunately, is deceased of cancer 10 years ago, Michael Margulis. Panina Rosenkrantz left Princeton to go to Columbia, I think, if I recall. And John Paolella, I think, was going out to be a concert pianist, but I haven't found record of it. So,
wow, very diverse group of people. Yeah. Yeah. It's
and then I think you was it after that you came to Oxford and studied there?
Then I became a Marshall Scholar from Princeton to Oxford. Yeah, I should have told you there's an essay on my site in my creative writing section titled Romance, which was invited by the British Embassy before Bill and Kate's wedding.
Oh.
They invited the Marshall Scholars from the Charles and Diana year to write essays comparing the two weddings and telling their stories. So you can read about my going to Oxford. But yes, I was lucky enough to be a Marshall Scholar. And I really
so you're an author as well as everything. I was.
Oh, what?
Author.
Author, yes, that's right. Yeah, if I had more time, I would do more creative writing. But of course, I do creative writing, in essence, in articles on the Gödel's Lost Letter weblog, originated by Professor Lipton, who is also my co-author on this book.
Okay.
So we write upwards of one or two columns a week on mathematical topics, but often social topics and humor and satire. So that's a weekly engagement with creative writing.
Yeah.
But so in Oxford, you probably came across an awful lot of strong British players as well. I think Peter Well.
I mean, the Oxford team had an average ELO of over 2,400 at those days.
My goodness.
And just my college, Merton College, one of 30 plus colleges, had William Watson join as an undergraduate after 2 years there. And we had Dugald MacPherson, who was a master level player, FM level player. And then we had Alistair Simpson, if I remember his name correctly, who was almost like high 2100s. And so, in fact, I actually floated the idea that Merton College could challenge France to a match, because France did not even have a grandmaster at that point. Yes. And it might have been an even match. We would have been, lower on fourth board, but so we considered we would have, invited Oxford, and they would have had high table and festivities, so enough to make their travel worthwhile.
Oh wow!
It could have been Merton College versus France. Yeah.
Yes. Also, Will he also didn't choose to go into professional chess, so he's a strong grandmaster, and he went into law. So he's and I know because he plays in a chess team I was captaining, and he would always turn up half an hour late to the match because he's been working, and then he'd come in, play his moves really quick. Sometimes he'd win, draw, and then he'd go straight back to work again. So I was always standing outside the door just before the default time to check if it actually turned up, and he would be there, but it was always a little bit nerve-wracking.
Wait, this is online or in person?
No, this was in person. This was he was playing for. He and I were both playing. I was captaining. It was I think we were Barbican Chess Club at the time, and in the London League. And so he was one of my top players in the team each time.
Yeah.
But did you play the varsity match, Ken?
Yes, I played it, I believe, 3 times. I was first board twice, and then third board, I think with William on Watson on first board. I meant to check this history, and I forgot to before coming here. But yes, that was a wonderful experience.
I would imagine Oxford was very strong at this time, so would have won the varsity match in the years.
Yes, I think we did.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever lost. I think the 3 times I played. I mean, I could check the website very quickly.
Yeah, I think this was the golden period of Oxford. I think when they were winning an awful lot of matches, one after the other. It's
Yes, and I think Cambridge has retaken the lead, haven't they,
It
recently?
has, yes, but I mean, it was the golden age of Britain, period.
yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah,
2,400 players in university. I mean, I do have to look at the average rating now is at 2,300.
yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
And
Well, when I played, I was in it, and our top player was only like 22.50 at the time. I was Cambridge, and we were heavily outrated by Oxford.
okay, that's right.
Yeah.
But you played.
Nita Rakshit playing on the ladies' board, and maybe Marie Eagle played once. So
Oh, okay.
more illustrious people I knew.
Yeah.
So she's now a politician,
member
isn't
of Parliament and Education.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Secretary for a while. Yeah. So.
she? Yeah.
But did you play a lot of chess when you were in England, Ken, or was it just? I saw you played one tournament.
It's very funny. I didn't play quite so much as I could have. So I have a few stories about it. But one thing was at the point where I was starting to write mathematical papers for conferences. I was finished 2 years of graduate studies. I played in the tournament in Scandinavia, and then I played in one in Manchester.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for some reason, all my mojo was gone. I won one game, drew 13, and lost 4 between the two tournaments. And just realized, wow, my creativity seemed to have gone out. And I played in one tournament on the Oxford campus where I had an incredible 10-move combination against, is it Gert Lichterink? No.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was a Dutch grandmaster, was the top seed. And it really was a brilliant conception by me. And at the end of a long sequence of exchanges, he has just his queen on b3, and I have a pinned rook on e6 and a rook on c8. So the end of my combination was rook on c8 captures pawn on c3, deflecting the queen. And I actually played the move. Queen takes c3, and then rook to e1, back rank, checkmate.
Oh no.
Except that he has queen takes c3, captures on e1.
Oh.
Yes. But
Yeah, that's when you realise you want to take a little break from the chess,
that's right.
and recharge your batteries.
Yes,
Yeah.
otherwise it was a good event. But then I got into the thesis writing stage in a big way, and then I didn't play until my last month in Oxford. I played in a tournament in Swansea, and I did very well.
The British Championships.
Not really, maybe it was. It was run
Oh,
by
I was there.
Stuart Rubin. It was run by Stuart Rubin in
Yes, it
September
was.
1980. Well, it was 86.
It was my first British Championships, and there was the swimming pool. Do you remember there was the playing area and then a swimming pool, and then the analysis room would look out into the swimming pool.
Oh, man, I don't remember that much.
Do you remember that bit? But yes, okay, it was
No. So here's the funny thing though. I was winding up my accounts my last month in Oxford as a junior fellow of the college, and my biggest expense was horrific monthly phone bills with the person who was now my wife, whom I met and was in England, so an intercontinental relationship. But I miscalculated by 1 month. So the 180 quid that I won for tying in third place enabled me to close my accounts cleanly without having to
Oh, thank goodness.
have any hangover. Yes. So then
So
once I
a
realized
pressure
there was-
situation in the last
One-
round then.
yes, one more phone bill, and then my things went into the shipping containers, and off I went.
Yeah.
And there was a potentially better aspect to the story, but it turned out not to be true, so I won't tell it.
Okay.
But you stopped. You carried on playing till about 83, 84, and then somehow your name disappears from ChessBase somehow.
Right, from 86, which was that tournament, through 96, I basically did not play chess, but I got first a postdoc in Cornell, then in the tenured track position at Buffalo. I got married, we bought a house. We had our first of 2 children. Then I got tenure, so I had the publisher perish, lots of papers.
Yeah.
And then in 1996, I played chess again.
Okay.
But the next year, we had our second child. And then that year, I got my idea for proving P dot equal NP, which actually diverted my career in the sense that I didn't do the ticking boxes things that you're supposed to do to become a full professor. Making sure I published all the research I had. I went full bore out to solve the biggest problem in my field because I had a very distinctive idea, which, however, did not work. It was refuted by an Italian professor in 2000. And in fact, the very same day, I got the email from the Italian professor and Ron Henley's friend Paul, I forget his last name, noted a mistake in my analysis of the Kasparov world match.
Oh, no.
Double hammer day. Then I got sick for a couple of years, which is a weird story. Then that was about the time for the 2006 World Championship match on which my chess cheating vocation took off. So since then, I've been wearing 3 hats. 1, as a computer scientist, computational complexity theorist. 2, as my research on human decision-making at chess and cheating detection. And 3, partner on this noted weblog in mathematical computing.
Yeah. So in that 2006 World Championships, how did that then cause you to get into your anti-cheating?
Right. So what happened is I discovered from actually receiving Fritz as a Christmas present the year before from my mother that there was chess online and that chess tournaments were broadcast online. That was the new thing for me. Yeah. I had been a charter member of ICC.
Oh, okay.
Slater is a computer scientist in my field. In fact, his advisor is a close friend of Richard Lipton. His advisor, Bob Tarjan, also being Grandmaster Jim Tarjan's brother.
Oh, wow. My goodness.
Yeah. So anyway, so I was following the San Luis 2005 online and doing comments in the chat when my old friend Yasser Saruman, who was doing the broadcast, recognized me. So I realized this was a fun thing to do, so I was doing it in the World Championship match, 2006, when Silvio Danilow's accusing letter was released. And Frederick Friedel said in the same open chat, is there anyone qualified to help us evaluate such statistical accusations of cheating? And I realized, oh yes, I am qualified. Because I'm in a small group with people like Hans Berliner, Ed Formanek, and Jonathan Mestel. Behind Jonathan, none only in terms of combined mathematics ability and chess reading. Mm-hmm. So I very quickly went to work on first a qualitative and now a quantitative model. Now there's a further story. I very quickly discerned the reason why, although Kramnik matches the computer 90% in the second half of game 2 of that match in particular, which is the one I think upset Topalov the most.
Yeah, can you remind us what the contents were in that letter and what the accusation was?
Okay, so the contents in that letter were, I could share my screen, but they were analysis of the first 5 games of the match, skipping the unplayed game 5, showing the percentage agreement with Fritz Knott.
Okay.
And alleging that agreement was higher than usually happens with humans and computers. And
this was Topalov's team accusing Kramnik.
Accusing Kramnik of cheating.
Okay.
And but I very quickly discerned in the games that most of Kramnik's moves, especially in the critical portions of that second game, were absolutely forced.
Yeah.
So he had only one move to stay in the game, and later only one move to win. Yeah. To keep his advantage, I should say.
Yeah.
And so here we go. Here's the this still works as a link. Sometimes images on chess-based archives don't display the way they should, but at least not on my machine. So if I share my screen,
Yeah.
here we go. So we see after very detailed analyze of all games of the match, we have these coincidence statistics, 63%, 87%.
Yes.
Now, I don't reproduce all of these, but I do reproduce this one in the second half of the game. But I have an explanation for it. That the game
Those percentages are actually quite low compared with some of the ones you see on the online websites today.
Now that's a very touchy subject. And you saw me leap into it in the very brief 2 minutes I had on the broadcast of the European Online Championships. You're talking about the chess.com cap scores.
That sort of thing, yeah.
That's what you are. Now, what that is a scale, a 0 to 100 scale, on which 0 is suicide chess.
Okay.
Maybe not different from monkeys typing playing random chess moves.
Yes.
So they can title up the error. So the 90% does not mean 90% agreement with Stockfish. That's very misleading.
Yeah.
And actually, I got after them a month ago to fix several issues, including the non-display of error bars that I think, I've had some cheating tests since then where people have been misled by those scores.
Okay.
It's a different meaning. Also, I don't know, I should see if Danny Wrench has fixed his webpage, but the table that is shown there up to 2400 is illogical because it goes over 100% at 2650. They told me privately they need to fix the top of the curve, but anyway, so that's not the more subtle thing is when you see scores on ChessBase, those are about 10 percentage points higher because they are doing the analysis backwards from the end of the game. Which is exactly what you do want to do if you're doing it for training, because that gives you the benefit of deeper evaluation of the moves you played. And especially if it's a game you won and you have advantage, the deeper you look, the greater the advantage the computer sees, thus bias in favor of the move you played. Okay, so that's okay, but it creates about 10 percentage points of bias compared to the stats of the way I do it, which is going forward. My witticism about that is that the only player who's cheating you would catch the chess that way with Fritz is Merlin, because he runs backward in time in the Arthurian legends. So yeah, there is a non-consistency of the scales. Other places, Chess BV is its own scale, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But my papers are academically published, and they use the simplest, most straightforward methodology.
Yeah.
And I basically do agree with Guide and Bracco's work. They originated the work in 2006. So so that's what the thread that should be referenced.
Fine. So we were kind of one of the very first people that got into this field then, I guess. And
That's
you
right.
set it up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you the only one actually nowadays, Ken, or are there more people who are doing the sort of work you're doing?
I should mention Diogo Ferreira in 2012 has gotten to me surprising mileage out of a concept of game, which is how much more the computer likes a move after it is played than before.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it would just be a secondary effect, but it turns out to be surprisingly robust, so I rather respect it. So no, there are lots of, and there are people who do more behavioral studies than I do. I'm just on the technical side, and that's also very important. There was someone in Argentina who did a lot of pattern matching. That work is beautiful. I don't know her name offhand, but it's a woman in Argentina.
Do you think, I've always just been intrigued actually, do you think that it would help your own chess, having all this insight about how people play and when they follow computer moves and when they don't, and would give you some very powerful insight, I think, into.
It could. I mean, I think I am detecting that effect quite generally, because I'm getting. I mean, this will be on my priority list for the next year. I'm getting the result that human play is actually improving, perhaps because of computer input. So, and this is part of the larger debate about rating inflation. where I say there's been no inflation, except what you would expect during the 1990s and 2000s from the faster time controls and lack of and cessation of adjournments. So I do think that that effect is happening. I just completed a major overhaul of my model twice in the past year. So now I'm equipped to give what I think will be the definitive evaluations of this. But preliminary ones I've done with my older model indicate that. So it's possible. So I wonder, how much untapped potential do I have, since I was essentially on the same track as Laszlo was. And so if I really studied the game for the first time and studied books, and yes, even some of these strategies, then, how much would that improve my chess?
Yeah.
It's
and the target would be to get ahead of Laszlo.
Well, I don't know about that, but the target would be to get the Grandmaster title.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, and you also played a big part in the Kasparov versus the rest of the world match.
Yes, that was also one of my first things with the internet, and there's a this is a story I guess I don't mind telling. I had a doctoral student who was the first of two main students whom I was working with on my attempt to resolve the algebraic version of FIDE, the Holy Grail of life. And he told me about this in starting in late May of 1999. He told me about this match, and I just was not interested because I was not much of an online player. And he kept on telling me about it. And then finally, in mid-July, I took a look in. And what I saw was that Ron Henley, whom I knew as a junior player, was being vilified, along with Irina Krush, for trading into an endgame that people thought was lost. And I thought, oh no. So I had an instinct to defend my friend. So I wrote a post about how really beautiful this game had been and how complicated the endgame would be. And that started me on a slippery slope to actually being involved, because there should have been a principle in that match. It should have been declared from the start that no one with a rating above the level of the junior panelists, so Elizabeth Pates and Irina and Etienne Bacro, all 2300s at the time, should have been allowed to contribute to the match. But there were teams of grandmasters doing it, so I got involved, and then the game just got more and more ethereal. I'd never seen such complex and beautiful chess lines. And so I got drawn in, and then when it traded into the queen endgame, the queening race, I decided to try to organize research by internet. Now that is a proper professional thing for me to do. And so I wrote a page, which I can also share. So I wrote this very long page, and I took part in the news group on so let me share my screen again. So I took part in the Microsoft-led news group, and I wrote a very long post titled "World Team Endgame Strategy Explained," because also the endgame was my forte in chess. When I co-won the U.S. Junior Championship in 1977, I won 5 endgames.
Okay.
And we're going to see, however, one of my misadventures in the endgame. So I wrote this very long post based on my knowledge of queen endgames. And at the end of this post, you can tell it's incredibly long, I wrote how people, A through H point list of what players could do, and they did. Now, later on, about 10 years later, the person in my field, Michael Nielsen, wrote a popular book called Reinventing Discovery, which is about internet research. And he used the Kasparov world match as a general example, drawing on, not completely focusing on me, but drawing on this, for this kind of work as something that professionally is happening more and more. And now on the blog, Lipton and I are friends with your Fields medalist, Tim Gowers, and he was one of the co-originators of the Polymath project, which has massive research collaboration on maths problems and we often cover those on the Gödel's Lost Letter blog, of which I have an example here, but it's not showing up. Oh, it is showing up on the screen. So this was our April Fool's post.
Okay.
So anyway, so the point is that I became completely absorbed in the match. And when the game broke up because of a miscommunication, Kasparov published a 13-page file purporting that he could have won, but I refuted it. I was up all night with my mother-in-law visiting, and then...
She a chess player?
No, but she is my lovely mother-in-law who we were on a FaceTime call with earlier today. And she is, by the way, a music education researcher.
Okay.
So if you want a small world situation, from music conferences, she's friends with the Cox family, who also knows Guy Howarth in Reading, who are the in-laws of poor Mary Cox, the MP who was assassinated 4 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's small world.
Small world, yeah.
But anyway, back to the match. So I was completely absorbed in it, and then doing the endgame analysis and getting into computer chess did derail my concentration on the work with the student. And in fact, that student eventually left to go into business or related activities at Carnegie Mellon. So, I should say also that the approach we had in mind was refuted by an Italian professor the following year. So,
but you had to try it. You would never have forgiven yourself if you hadn't tried to do it.
Well, it was twin loves. Endgames were my forte, and it was a preparation for getting me into computer chess.
Yeah.
And as the idea, because being an early example of massive internet research was a worthwhile activity in itself. I did co-author 3 articles with Marina Crush, analyzing the match, and Marina and I are friends on that account. So.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. It's 27th of June, 2020. Here in the UK, we're opening up again and allowed out of our houses, but there's still coronavirus in the community. How are things where you are, and how have you been affected?
Things have been relatively clear in Western New York because the population is very obedient. Cases have been fairly sparse. I mean, there have been deaths. That's very regrettable. But our hospitals were not overrun. Yeah. And there's a general feeling that it's safe, but of course we still take all the precautions. I did visit my mother in New Jersey, where things were much, much more dire 3 months ago, but are now similarly safe. It is unfortunately really, really upsetting to me. It's really good, close to my heart to see what is happening in the southern part of our country. And I tell you that I have been intending to write some articles on the mathematics of the coronavirus. Indeed, since March, Oxford released a study that has really amazing scientific principles. They said that they make the assertion that there is a large proportion of the population that has had the virus and is completely asymptomatic. Okay. And they made that inference 3 months ago on the basis that assuming this makes their mathematical model simpler and fit better. The same reasoning of beauty in math that is in the physics string theory to me. Okay. And this is the case, and I've been itching to get time to investigate this, because that really is my proper professional work. Yes. But the need to finish the 2nd edition of my textbook and now the instructor manual and the complete explosion of chess cheating cases online pressing me into service.
I guess that's been really, really busy, the chess online.
It has, unfortunately, yes. So,
I mean, in fact, what sort of work have you done on that? Or,
Well, there's a very high irony. So, online chess cheating detection makes use of information that I do not touch. Information about the manner in which the moves were played. Does the person go between windows? time delays. There are various special bits of information that just don't apply to over-the-board chess.
Okay.
And so for a known toy example, every online chess platform has a GUI in which you click on a square. Well, you click with your mouse somewhere in the square.
Yeah.
If you click on the exact center pixel and do that 3 times in a row,
Yeah.
we know with astronomical certainty that it's not a human being doing that. No one
Yeah.
has that good hand-eye coordination. Whereas a bot might be programmed to return the coordinates of the center of the square. Okay. So things like that, but they just don't come up in over-the-board chess. And I use only the moves of the game.
Yeah.
So ever since a wonderful conversation with Daniel Slater in November 2006, I have not tried to intrude upon the domain of online chess.
Yeah.
Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Online chess, of course, has a component parallel to mine, but the forensics that they can do are just so much more accurate.
Yeah, I see.
Now, the online chess platforms have now been in competition for over-the-board cheating detection, where I still think I'm at least a half sigma ahead.
Okay.
What seems to be proving out, I don't want to make greater claims for myself, and I don't want to give any confidences, but I do seem to be relevant even now that the turf is online.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
It's the analysis component that I'm able to perceive is often usefully better than the online person's own analysis component. Plus, I have an advantage of general scientific awareness and presentation.
Yeah.
My screening reports have been useful for the arbiters to give a global picture of a tournament.
Yeah.
And I've been in negotiations with FIDE for 4+ years to enable a central server so that any arbiter anywhere in the world could do the stage 1 of my cheating scripts.
Okay, yeah.
I deliberately have a 2-stage system where only the first stage is automated, and anything for judgment has to go through human hands.
Yeah.
So I'm very much against the philosophy of press a button and get a number and make a judgment that most people would wish to keep their lives easier. I'm very much on the side that this is a human rights concern, due process is paramount. And I deliberately made the judgment portion of the system have as much backing up and second opinions and going through human hands as you can imagine.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Which again, also, however, though, at the volume of cases in online play, that is a very great resource drain for the humans involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah.
you know, I was basing on 10 over-the-board cases a year for
Yeah,
my expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, the case of Grandmaster Rouses last year, where I was heavily involved, was a kind of like 10 human cases all by itself.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much for that. Now, if you need to go into lockdown, say there's for coronavirus, and you're allowed to take just one chess game with you, which game would you take and why?
Oh, that's it. Well, let's see. Well, I would say the Kasparov World Game if I want the deepest game ever played. That still has. If I want among the most beautiful games, well, the recent game by Anand over Aroni Black from Vaikansei 3-4 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So it was the candidates. I forget which one.
The semi-Slav, that was a semi-Slav where he sacked all those pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's not a long-lasting game, but just the way Black's initiative unfolds. So I would love to see someone do a book imitating the style of a hagiographic book about the old masters and writing them, as if horses and buggies are going by, but, using today's games in that historical light, because I think that would lead to a different appreciation of chess, whereas now everything's so quickly available online that we don't take the time that you would if curled up in a chair by the fire to just appreciate the slow pace, the beauty of the strategies.
Yeah.
Of course, Anand was mostly computer prep, maybe. I guess I haven't seen definitive word on that. ditto a game by Wesley So against Jeffrey Strong, where I wanted to get more information about that game from the 2017 U.S. Championship because it's important to my work.
Okay.
But if you had to take one of my games, my most memorable game would be my last round win, a very advantageous win over Laszlo Szabo from the 1977 Lone Pond, which catapulted me into a tie for 7th in the tournament, tied with or ahead of all of the 6 U.S. champions who took part.
Okay. Okay.
Brilliant.
And there is, however, a humbling lesson connected with computers during the game. So I don't know if you want me to say a few things more about stories before I go in to show the moves of the game.
No, we'll end this interview here, and then we'll get the chessboard up, and then we'll have a look at the game.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks ever so much for talking with us.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, I guess I could have told more stories about Oxford, I guess, but it was just a great situation there, and the chess climate in Britain was wonderful. We more dense, more preponderance than the climate in the U.S. I'd say.
Yeah.
Although,
Well, those terms in Oxford and Cambridge, they're like 8-week terms, and they're really, really full on.
Yeah, but that's right. Well, the U.S. scene has gotten incredibly better. So say Michael Rode and FIDE and some of the other people who have been, who were with me at the time. Okay, sure. I guess I show my screen. Are you going to show yours with the game, or how?
Yeah. No, we're just going to stop this interview here, and then afterwards, I'm just going to share my screen. We'll start the interview up again, and we'll go for it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, so this was my last round game against Laszlo Szabo, who was among the highest level players I ever faced, the only candidate I ever faced until I played Jan Elvest in the last round of the tournament held on my campus in 2006. That was pretty amazing. Oh,
right. Okay. Wow.
So Elvest was in my building. But anyway, and he beat me, but it was just a great experience.
Yeah.
I was black against the famous Laszlo Szabo.
Yeah, a very strong player. Yeah.
In the 8th round against Larry Christensen. Prior to that, I was actually in contention for first place at Lone Pond. So I played the Queen's Fianchetto defense, which was my trademark.
Ooh.
And it was another way of saying that I did not spend time studying openings.
Yes, you can avoid theory with this one.
You could avoid theory, yes. And bishop d3 and c5. So I was under pressure for most of this game. So you can play through the moves fairly quickly because the real point, this bishop g5 I never faced. That actually I was fairly happy to see because
exchange off some pieces. Yeah, very nice.
Yeah, exchange off some pieces. Although my dart spears might become weak. And I don't know, knight g6. Maybe that's not a great move. Yeah, I suddenly started. Suddenly I realized at this point, well, I never played knight c6 in this opening. I gave up on the light squares and decided to go for a dart square blockade. So,
which kind of happened. Yeah, I mean, this has turned out quite recently, actually. Just a fairly solid Queen's Indian type position where it's never going to be easy for White to break through on the dark squares.
Zero did pawns a bit like that with the d6, e5, and f6.
Yes, no, indeed.
We had a game today about that.
Yeah, we looked at it. We did a.
It's possible I was never worse because because I did play over from turn 40 on a computer recently, just to make sure that the punch lines I have are still valid.
Yeah.
And I still think I'm under pressure. I'm going to come under an attack on the king side.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm ever really worse.
No, I think it's kind of difficult for White to break through. I mean, he can move his pawns up, but it's not 100% clear whether he's really any better. It's just quite a complicated position, especially when you get this counterplay going like this. It's takes, and then he starts on this side with g5.
Laszlo Szabo, is he known for being a particular style of player? Does he like the end games or the middle games?
I pictured him as a positional player, but that's partly conflating him with Lajos Portas.
Yeah, he was a very good all-round player, actually. I mean, I got his book of best games recently from a second-hand bookshop, and there were some very impressive games in there, But he could do a bit of everything. I think, he was a very good all-round player. He didn't take back on G5. He went knight G3. He was really going for it here. I think I had the feeling. It's really trying to H6. I was actually almost expecting him to play H4 here and try and break everything open. But again,
very strangely though, Stockfish in my window is saying that Black has a large advantage, and I just never felt that way during the game after G5.
Yeah.
So it's and that's going to be the punchline about what computers find in our games. But,
yeah, exactly.
But obviously he's carrying the play, he's attacking, so he's not playing like someone who is 1.5 behind.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just Queen A5, Queen G2, King H7. Yeah, pretty solid really. It's hard to break through there. A3. Were you both in time trouble here, Ken?
Not really.
Okay.
Actually, no, I budgeted my time. Plus, there was an adjournment at turn 40 for a 2-hour banquet.
A 2-hour banquet. Wow.
Banquet, yes.
So I guess you couldn't do much study though during the banquet.
I did have my pocket set out, but
did you? Yes.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So
Queen C7.
Well, yeah, there's this F7 pawn at me. You'll see that the D pawn is going to be a monster soon too. So I'm definitely being pressed. But I maybe if I realized I really had the advantage, I would have found more assertive moves to make.
Yeah, this is. But this is. You're doing nicely. I mean, you're just containing him and exchanging off his pieces. So
right.
that can't be bad. Queen D7, a good move, just to hold the light squares there. King G7.
I'm going to try to get rid of F7. So.
Indeed. Knight F5.
My D pawn under surveillance.
Queen F7. Queen A6. How many pawns are you up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
2 pawns up.
I'm up 2 pawns, but C6 is going to fail. But here I did start calculating very well that he was not going to break through. I have a way of stopping knight takes D6 from being effective. So I played Queen C7. This is the part of the game I remember now. And the point is, if he takes on D6, I have Queen B6, which is a nice and effective squelch.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah. Got him covered, and my pass pawns on the king side combined.
Yeah. Exactly. So he went King G3, just waiting, I guess. Right. And you went Knight D7.
Knight D7. Yeah. So.
And I played an interesting move here, didn't he? He played Queen C6,
which is the best move. So that was turn 39, and.
Ooh, yeah, big decision. Well, I
take it, and I calculated this fairly well. That I was okay to take this to allow that monster pawn, and then I played Knight B6. Now, I am in fact not winning here, but at this point of the game, I thought, I'm in this to win. I've got 2 more pawns, so I was not on my heels at this point.
Yeah.
And here's where the game was adjourned. He sealed his 41st move. Obviously, I knew he was going to take my pawn, so. And so then the question comes, do I have to block C7 or can I allow C7, C8 winning my knight? And I calculated that I could allow that. So now I turned into overdrive of just advancing my pawns at him. So this is it, and I've done some analysis on the pocket set too.
Okay, yeah. So you played D3 here, didn't you?
Right, played D3.
It's
and I may have calculated this during the banquet.
Okay, yeah. I think I was looking at it together with my engines. I think they actually wanted to play King F6 in this position. Strangely enough, which was just actually, yeah, you're just going to play king e6, and then this seemed to be pretty good for black, but d3 was also a pretty good move.
Yes.
It's
I should say, by the way, that I am also a published composer of endgames.
oh,
Okay.
Going back a long way, Paul Banker, and so one of my studies is in fact included in a roundup of the best American compositions.
oh wow.
And so this stood as the one time that I felt I had done the equivalent of solving an endgame study over the board.
Okay.
Okay,
We're
wonderful.
about to see the comeuppance of that. So carry on, yes.
So king f2 was a good move, I think.
And that rushes my other pawn at him.
Yeah, g4.
That 2 pawns on the 6th rank can stop a king from capturing either one.
And he went, king e3 here.
Right.
And you went h5.
Right.
Moving the pawn forward. So,
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, king takes
He
d3.
takes on d3. Oh, he does take on d3. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so now I had time to rush my king forward.
king to g5, indeed.
King d5, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and here he went king e3, didn't he?
Right.
Because I think, if I remember rightly, that I think c7 was an idea
This is
here.
one point where some engines may initially give a plus to white, but when I looked at Peter's out to a draw.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
and white has that combined with ideas of a4, a5.
exactly. That's right.
And
Yeah,
that can lead to some harem-scarum lines, but they all come out to queen endings where in fact black is holding.
yeah, that's right. Knight c8 was the idea. h2, and this was just going to be a draw by perpetual, I think.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
it's but yeah, a lovely little line actually. This a4 to a5, but
I can block it with a5 myself. That's also fine.
yeah, that's also true. Yeah,
To allow a5 by white. I can
Yeah.
also block it by a5.
yeah. I think he plays b4 then, doesn't he? And then just tries.
And then we get a pawn race in a different way. Sometimes my b pawn quits.
Exactly. But he played a reasonable move as well. He played king e3, and you carried on with your king.
Right. So psychologically, you see, I was going for the win at this point. I was not
Yeah.
trying to hold. So,
King f2.
right.
The king came down to h3, threatening king h2, of course, and g3. So he went all the way back.
Right. Here was another point where he could have played c7. But,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, but
And now you went king g3.
right.
And this was, I mean, it's quite surprising actually, but it's really, very, very difficult for White to do this. I can imagine that. And was he surprised when you were playing all these moves, Ken? Was he a bit shocked at how aggressive you were playing?
Well, he may have been. Also, it was a convivial banquet.
Oh,
And so and I was less convivial than he was.
okay.
So,
Were there drinks at this banquet?
yes.
Yes.
But I was not yet 18, so
Oh, okay, of course. Yes.
Big advantage there. Big advantage.
yes. So,
Because traditionally, you might expect that the junior is going to be the less good at the end game, whereas I guess you caught him out with that.
that was my fort, you see.
Yes.
Even I defeated Yasser for a year. So this was April '77.
Yes.
So c7,
Now
and now you went
he goes about collecting my knight. Right.
exactly. It's c8 queen. Play that one. Whoop. Takes, and now h3. Quite amazing.
Right. Yes. So now he's got to rush his knight.
All the way back.
Oh yeah. So this is very funny. This is a very funny maneuver that happens. He rushes his knight back that way, but that leaves me able to take his e pawn. So I go for the e pawn.
Okay. Whereas if it had been on d6, he would be defending.
Now what he's done is he has distracted my king away from the danger corner.
Yeah.
where I could have tried to checkmate him. So now he has time to collect my pawn.
Oh, that is actually
Junction.
that is actually very. I'll just play it again because it's quite fun, isn't it? You could take the pawn on a7 immediately, but in fact he
made it in the corner.
Yeah, he takes the detour in order to force your king away. That's very nice. Yeah, very nice indeed.
Now here was the juncture where I played what I thought was a brilliant move. Okay, so the point is, if I play king f3, then he goes knight c6, I go e4, and then he has knight to e5 check. And it's a balancing check that solves a lot of problems in his position. Okay, and eventually I have nothing better than to allow him to give perpetual checks.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, however, so I used to present, so in the era before computers, I used to present this to people. And the conceptual idea was, instead of making way for my e-pawn, I am going to block my e-pawn. So I played king e3. And through the year 2001 or 2 or so, I thought this was a brilliant move by me. So when he played knight c6.
Indeed.
And I played e4. And now what gives me, so then he played knight e5, actually technically played b4 first.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I played g3. And now he has to play knight e5, which is not check.
Oh yeah, he played...
Now we have... Yeah. If he does that, he's going to be mated in the corner with h2 check. And so let's show that as a threat. If he plays b5, he'll play h2 check. Then king g2, then h1 equals queen. The key theme. And king takes queen. And then king f2, and now his knight is too far away to stop me queening the g-pawn and giving checkmate.
It's beautiful. Really is beautiful.
That's a latent threat.
Yeah.
So what he does instead, now that is in fact what happens in the game. He did not see my threat.
Yeah.
But now suppose he plays knight e5. Okay. Now, what gives us at least the beginning of the beauty of the study is that I repeat the theme. The winning move for black is king e2.
Okay.
And caterpillaring in front of the pawn.
Oh, okay.
It seems counterintuitive. And now I'm threatening the h2, h1 queen with the choice of going to f1 or f2.
Yeah.
So he must move his knight again, knight to g4. And now I complete by caterpillaring my pawn forward again, pawn to e3. And he can play b5. And I go king f3. He goes knight to e5 check. And I go king e4. Now we've reversed the donkey and the cart. And if he goes b6, I'm not going to capture his knight. I just play king, pawn e2, and it is checkmate. So
that is beautiful. Yeah, that is a beautiful theme.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I don't know what chess computer it was, but the chess computer had the last laugh. So now let's back up several moves.
It's here, I think.
To the point where I played king e3. Right. So most unfortunately, one more move back. Yes. So unfortunately, king e3 is actually a losing blunder. So when I play king e3, white can in fact win with a move that I originally discounted because it is not going to give checks.
Yeah.
Or threaten pawn on g4. So white can in fact win by playing knight to b5. And the problem is that the knight is going to be an absolute rock on c3. Okay. And it's going to stop both my h2 tricks and my e-pawn.
Yeah.
So I was playing this over. I started up Fritz or chess computers after the Kasparov World Game, and I thought, oh, good. Let's see what the computer says about my beautiful win over Laszlo Szabo.
Oh no!
And instead, oh no, that I've in fact totally lost. Right. So unfortunately, I cannot claim to have solved an endgame study over the board.
It's a beautiful idea, though. It really is a beautiful idea. It really is gorgeous. It's yeah. This is oh dear. But what? How did Szabo react? Was he upset or was he?
He never knew. he never knew about it. I don't think I told him before he passed away.
Yeah.
I found this myself in 2003 or so.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, it's one of those one of the things that happens so often nowadays. You play a great game, and then it's just you put the game in on the engine, and then sort of cover your eyes and hope that the engine will be
nice endgame.
hope that the engine will be merciful. But but still, I mean,
It was the greatest win of my life at that point. It was completed my second IM norm. So.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well, Ken, thanks.
There is one remark I meant to make in the interview about AlphaZero.
Oh.
And to my mind, the most amazing fact about AlphaZero, and see if you can tell me more about this, is that the size of the network file that it uses, or that you download if you run LeelaZero, is only about half a gigabyte, which is not much longer than a Facebook cat video. Okay, and yet that 500 gigabytes, which is almost nothing to download nowadays, is a tightly rolled up oracle for mastery at chess, such that a shallow search accessing that file can defeat a deep search of an engine such as Stockfish at the matches.
Yeah.
And so all of the wisdom of chess has been compressed into a file that's not even a gigabyte, it's just 500 meg.
Yeah.
You can't say how it's compressed, but that is just incredible. Somehow
amazing,
that small file, take all the chess books that have ever been published. It has the collective wisdom, not only of those books, not only of the 100,000s of great games played by the masters in our human history, but it also embodies the collective wisdom of all the games of chess that will ever be played by all the champions on any of Kirsan Oljumjinov's alien civilizations that will ever be played. And yet we have it now, and it is so small. And that is where my own field of computational complexity theory weighs in and say this is an astonishingly small size to embed all of that complexity in a usable, though not explainable, format.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you have some sort of reflection on that.
Yeah, it's I mean, we found. I mean, neither of us are computer scientists, So we found the whole AlphaZero phenomenon quite amazing. I mean, to be honest, the idea that something could teach itself to play chess that well without having any input whatsoever from human grandmasters seemed amazing when we started, and especially when we talked to the engineers, and they turned out not to have any chess knowledge at all. Really, they were just brilliant computer scientists.
Yeah, I think we asked about David Silver on this point.
Okay, yeah. We asked one of the scientists there about interpreting the outputs, and he said it's a bunch of numbers.
Right. Now, this is the second
is
major
chess
point.
quite mathematical? Yeah.
This is the second major point. So when Stockfish plays a move, you can kind of explain why it did, because you can go into the evaluation function, you could look at all the bits of code. You can sort of get an explanation. But with a neural net, any neural net, not just AlphaZero, it's a trained set of numbers where there's not a human explanation. And this is actually a major topic, a major issue, when models of this neural kind are used in decisions about loan, parole, school admission, cases where you would need to give an explanation, but it is doing profiling based on training with data, where there is a discontinuity in explanatory sequence. And in fact, I was chair of my department's Distinguished Speaker Committee. I hosted the person who is in charge of this program for the U.S. military, DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, for explainable AI. So we talked about this quite in general. Plus, I hosted another wonderful speaker from Penn State, Patrick McDaniel, who wrote about how neural nets can be deceived. You can change just pixels on a stop sign in such a way that the human eye can still recognize as a stop sign, but the neural net classifies it as a yield sign. And can we make neural nets more robust against that kind of deceit? Just as in chess, there are documented cases where a slight change in the position, moving the pawn to a3, really does completely change what's happening on the king side.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So that's again where this intersects my professional field.
I mean, I guess for us, actually, we were quite lucky that that the science isn't at the stage yet that the neural net can explain in a human understandable term what it's doing, because that meant there was that we would have a role there of explaining those. So what we were doing was looking at the outputs of what AlphaZero came up with. So basically the moves of the game, coming up with themes that were more human understandable. And I guess there's sort of parallels in human decision making, and sometimes you could get a feeling about something was the right, like an instinct, and you can't actually explain why you're thinking this is the right thing or that's the right thing, and so you just can't tell how your own brain is working. And I suppose a neural net would be like that kind of thought process where you sort of know from experience it is coming up with a sensible answer. As in the chess game, you can kind of test how strong it is compared with other engines or other people. But you just can't quite explain, or even like your own, when you're choosing a move, sometimes you just think, I really think this is going to be a good move, but I can't quite see why.
Yeah, can't quite put a finger. So, well, one reason why neural nets are foretold to work is that we are neural. So they ought to work. Deep learning does more knock-on than apparently our human brain systems do. In my field, single or bilayer neural nets in the form of perceptrons were classified as computationally weak by people, Minsky, Paper, McNaughton, who's actually 30 years ago, I started with their technical work. It began computational complexity. And that was one of the so-called causes of the AI winter.
Is this, you mean using perceptrons where it can only be 1 or 0 rather than getting the full range of outputs?
Yeah, or mainly the fact that perceptrons cannot discern visual tasks, they are visually hard to tell a squiggly curve which is inside, which is outside. We can't do that with our eyes. Perceptrons can't do it, but in complexity theory, that's a very low complexity class. Okay. So computationally, it's easy. So it's like saying that perceptrons were not up to, major grade computational tasks. Now, if you chain them together, then the answer changes. So that's where deep learning comes in.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but anyway, it is a fascinating field to see what will be done neurally. But at least in my chess work, my frequentist methods are staying ahead of attempts so far.
Okay. So in your studies on your studies helping FIDE on the cheating, you wouldn't use neural networks or AI at this stage?
That's right. I believe that neural networks are not as sharp for quality.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. But I suppose with that, you would need to know the answer, wouldn't you, before you start? Like, in order to train up a neural net to say whether someone's cheating or not, you'd need to have a lot of cases where you know whether they actually were or whether they weren't, and that's going to be...
Yeah, I would need people to communicate field tests on known cases.
Yeah.
And see, some of my work is in the public record, including proceedings of the Ethics Commission.
Okay.
So people can look up and see what my Z-scores were, and they can get the games of the player and field test their own work. And ideally, in a scientific community, those results should be communicated to me for evaluation, but that has not happened yet because there's a lot of proprietary caution involved. So I have to guess that I'm still ahead by indirect inferences that I make.
Yeah.
And then I just lay out my challenge. I say, no, your neural net models not. I mean, I have my own students' attempts as well, but those aren't necessarily full bore.
Yeah.
I can, lay down my challenge and continue to produce results that are apparently as good as what online companies are getting, or at least my results are relevant.
Yeah, yeah.
I lay it all out in full detail in that Doomsday Argument post on the Gödel's Lost Letter blog from 3 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I read it actually, but it's yeah. I mean, there's a lot of work going on still. But Ken, thanks very much indeed for having talked to us. It was really interesting, really lovely, and yeah, lovely to see this almost great endgame study in one of the game.
I'm glad for all your
from a junior player,
as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I hope to meet you in person at some point
sometime not too long.
In a reconstituted world.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much.